Morning, guys. Today I was going to make a video about ego and then the tricks that it plays. I had a conversation earlier in my DM and they just kind of reconfirmed to me that I just think a little bit different than some people. And I guess they kind of specified women. Or I had to generalize it and be like, you know what, a lot of people are ego driven. And the bad part is that they're unaware. And that's got me thinking is the fact that people are ego driven, but if people know the tricks that the ego plays and understands that it's not them, maybe there's a way for me to change people's perceptions about how to think and what to think, or what not to feed into, actually. So here goes. There's 4 different things that ego tricks you. And if you know these tricks, then you could kind of not feed into it. But if that's where you want to live, no judgment, that's up to you. So let me start by first explaining your mind, okay? Mind is a very powerful thing. Your mind is basically like a computer software, and there's a bunch of information stored, and it's all on your past. Everything that happened, it kind of associates with in the past. So it kind of gives you clarification on what's going on right now. And you have 2 things in play with the mind. Ego, and I like to say higher self or soul. And you are the observer of these 2 things. So if you don't already know, you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. And typically they come from 2 different points, ego or higher self. We live in a relative world, which basically means that it's a duality. Dark, light, good, evil. It comes into play. We can't escape it, but we can basically feed into whatever we want to feed into. So we give more energy. First off, let me say that this is the way I see it, and this is the way I've learned to kind of accept it. So this is not that I'm wrong or right. This is just the way that maybe other people can see what I've seen. So ego has a couple different emotions, and if you break down the word emotions, it's energy, and that's energy in motion. So that's kind of like what a frequency is, right? Energy. So I would say that ego plays into the low frequency energies, and the soul or higher self plays into the high frequency energies. So if you think about the low frequency energies, what would come into play? Fear is the biggest energy that ego plays up on us. Fear, sin, guilt, judgment, envy, jealousy. They're all coming to ego play. On the opposite spectrum, if you think about it, higher self is love, happiness, and envy and jealousy would be admiration over here. So it's a relative world. We live in 2 different mindsets we can play into. Like I said, nothing's good or bad. It just is what it is. I don't want to say that anybody feel judged because they play into their ego more than their higher self. That's not where I come from. I just know the patterns, and I know who plays into what, and that's okay. Like, anybody has their own way of living, and I don't judge anybody, except for I would rather stay with these type of people or hang out with or be around with than to be with the ego driven people, and that's just the way I am. But everybody has their own perceptions. So a couple different ways that the ego plays tricks on you, so that way you could kind of see how to kind of be aware of it. And that's the biggest thing, is awareness is key. Okay, so one is fear of past. So what ego does is that it basically pulls back information from your past to the present future. It makes you fearful and basically limiting you in the current now state. And for example, if you've been bullied before, now you have some sort of sense of self-worthlessness, if you want to call that, and you will act a certain way because of that lack of self-worth. Same thing with past relationships. If you've been hurt in the past, guess what? Ego is going to stop you from doing certain things. And not that ego is bad in this sense, because ego is technically trying to protect you, but in a lot of sense, it's also limiting you at the same time. Okay, so that's fear of past. Fear of future. So what that means is that it uses fear to future project certain things, so then that way it limits you now. And what that means is maybe feel a failure, right? So basically, I'm not going to start to weight train because I'm afraid that if I do, either people are going to judge me, which is right here, you're not going to accomplish it, so now you're a failure. Whatever it is, fear will stop you from doing what you currently want to do now, because it future trips you to the future. Now, one of the biggest tricks that ego uses is actually the opposite spectrum of it, and that is love. Okay, fear and love play hand in hand with the ego. Ego uses love to instill fear. There's a couple different ways that ego does this. One is idolizing. So, idolizing. And there's two different ways to idolize. One is idolizing self. So basically, ego separates you from another, right? So what it does is it makes you be like, oh, I'm better than somebody else because of whatever attributes that you want to list. Next is vice versa, is idolizing others. So basically, you're not as good as somebody because of idolizing, right? The attributes. Oh, she's prettier than me. She has more money than me. She is smarter than me. Whatever it is. Basically, ego separating you from another. And in reality, we all know that we are one. We're all the same. Yes, people are different, and this is why ego is more of like an identification with self. That's how you separate yourself, which is somewhat good sometimes, but most of the times for me, it's not good. And it plays into all these tricks that it plays, and I've come to realize where it plays. So that's why I don't play into that. The biggest thing is judgment. Is a lot of people, and not to say that small towns are good or bad, okay? And I had a hard time coming back into a small town because I grew up in a small town, and I disliked, I don't want to say small-minded people, but that's where I'm going, because a lot of people judge in these small towns, and that's my experience. So maybe it's not everybody's, but what I've come to realize is that a lot of people gossip, and it teared me down growing up, and it made me resent those type of people. And I had to come to a place with my own journey that I had to be okay with how people are. They're not like me, and that's okay, but they have the right to believe and do and judge whoever they want. I am not going to waste my time judging others, because that literally is a waste of energy for me. I spend my energy investing in myself and regaining everything that I want to gain. I don't want to talk about other people. So yeah, maybe we'll talk about what happened in the past, but I'm not throwing any type of shade, because that's not where I live. That's basically how ego drives people. Judgment, gossip, nasty thoughts, jealousy. That's where some people live, and that's okay. It's okay. Everybody goes through their own journey differently. They all have their own perceptions. They have their own devils, demons, battles that they have to go through. And eventually, they'll figure out, man, maybe the reason I judge is because there's something internally wrong with me. And maybe I should look into that. Maybe the one person that you should look in the mirror and self-reflect a little bit and be like, why do I judge these people? What is it in me that I can't accept these people and love them regardless of what they do, be, or what? You know, like everybody goes through their bad parts in life. Like that's just the way things are, because a lot of times we're not healed from the past. So now we bring it into the future, and it projects a lot of negative energy out, and people are like, oh, they're a certain type of way. I'm not gonna, that's so bad, blah, blah, blah. But what you're really doing is separating yourself from them and throwing shade and judgment, instead of just being like, that's where they're at, and that's okay. Hopefully, you know, you will always want people to feed into their higher selves. But if you judge them, guess what? Ego, you're right there with them. So not good or bad, it just is what it is. Last but not least, like I said, love. Love is the biggest way ego plays tricks on you. And biggest way is loss of love. So now loss of love creates that fear-based, right? So now what you do is you are going to, because you already want to idolize this person, right? The person that you're with. Oh, this person's it's like the best and most handsome. I love this person, all these energies. And don't get me wrong, you feel that because the mind kind of plays tricks on you and is like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. This feels so good. It's like a drug, right? So it's not that it's bad, but then when there is attachment, there is a fear of loss now. And if there is a fear of loss, basically it means that you will do almost anything to keep that love, energy, whatever frequency into play. And that creates very slippery slope. Because now you do all these things to please that other person without really thinking of yourself first. And that creates an attachment. And another way that ego uses love, and this is like such a common thing in my past, and maybe you guys experienced it as well, and it's so embarrassing to say, but it future trips you in the future. So what that means is that when you meet somebody, you're like, oh my God, I met somebody and they're gonna spend the rest of their lives with me, and now I could see us in our house and we have like this awesome wedding, and we have like all these things that we've always wanted, and we're gonna go on these trips, and it's gonna be so awesome. And guess what? A week later, you guys stop talking, and you're like, fuck, what the fuck, you know? And then you start to realize, like, oh, shit. Like, for me now, I'm like, oh, the fucking ego. Like, shut the fuck up, bro. Like, nobody wants your future tripping shit, because now I got my hopes up. That's me in the past, and now me in the present. I don't do that anymore. I mean, the thought is there. So stupid, right? Like, oh, I met somebody I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with, but guess what? It's just your ego fucking with you. And now that I'm like a little bit more aware of it, I'm just like, oh, you're stupid. Why would I even believe that I'm gonna marry this person? I just met them. Yeah, they're awesome, they're attractive, they have all this shit going for them, but it's not how it works, bro. Stop fucking with me. And yeah, so that's the ego tricks. Your mind is fucking powerful. It is. And there's two different ways you can see things. And it's all about belief systems, projections, ego, soul. Ego kind of yells at you. Have you ever experienced a moment where you text somebody and then all of a sudden, like, they don't text back, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, why aren't they texting back? Are they mad at me? Guess what? Bam, that's ego. They're not mad at you. They probably didn't even see the text yet. You know, they're probably busy. Like, who knows what they're doing? But like right away, your mind goes like, bam, I'm a bad person. Like, what the fuck? Like, you're not a bad person. They just didn't respond to your text soon enough. Like, why would you even say that about yourself? Why? Because ego fucks with you. Like, that's why. And it's just like, that's self-attack. Like, you don't need that. And sometimes you look in the mirror and then you're like, oh fuck, I'm fat, I'm ugly, oh my God, look, I have wrinkles. It's ego. Ego says, like, you're not good enough, you're not beautiful, you have roles, people aren't gonna accept you because you're a little bit chubby. Guess what? I fought that all my life. Fuck that. Like, I'm a good person. I know that. I have a good heart. Yeah, I might not be the best looking person. Yeah, I might have wrinkles. Yeah, I might have one gray hair. be jealous. Just kidding. But like, fuck, it's life. Who cares? Be the best person that you could be. And that's like what it's about. It's not about all the ego tricks that it plays on you. Like if you feed into it, that's what you're gonna get, is these bad vibes, this low energy frequency that you want to live in. And I mean, that's cool. Some people like to live in that energy. I'm not saying anything bad about it. It's just, if you don't want to live there, there's ways to get out of it. And that's by realizing that it's not you. You are the overseer of the two. You have two in play. One is ego and one is higher self. If you feed into the higher self, you're going to get a lot more of these love, happiness type of feelings and frequency that, you know what, I want to say it's a universal type of world, and most people want to live in love and happiness. Not in fear, anger, jealousy, sin, whatever you want to call it. Like, most people don't, and I don't care if you do. That's just your life. But if you don't want to live in that life, there's other ways. And it's just about just self-hacking, being like, bam, it's in my mind, it's not even me. Like, why would I even say that about myself? Why would I say I'm not beautiful, I'm not smart, I'm not funny? Like, there's a lot of different situations in life where those thoughts come up, and you start doubting yourself. And when you start doubting yourself, then you start limiting yourself. And when you stop limiting yourself, then you're not living life to the fullest. And that's what I'm saying, is like, you have to break through these mind games to live life to the fullest. And if you don't, that's okay too. But if you do want to, have a conversation with me, talk to me. I got some knowledge. I just want to share that this is one of the books that helped me out this year. It's called Spiritual Junkie. Gabrielle Berstein, whatever. I can't say shit half the time, right? Anyways, dope book. It has a lot of cool concepts. This is where I got most of my ego knowledge from, is that she kind of enlightened me about the ego tricks, and I was like, oh shit, fuck, I do that. How embarrassing. But guess what? Now that I know knowledge, right? Knowledge is key. Now I could practice it, and that's what's called wisdom. Wisdom is over the knowledge. You can't have one without the other. First, you have to have the knowledge, and then eventually you'll get into that wisdom mode to be like, oh, now I know, now I do. And that's wisdom. So there you go. That's the ego tricks, and that's what it plays on you. 4 main ones, if you want to recap it. All right, fear of loss, which is fear of past, fear of future. You have judgment. You have love, idolization. So 4 different ones. Let me know what you think about this video. If you like it, cool. If you don't, I don't care. Judge me. I'm not wearing a shirt. Judge me. I have rules. I don't give a fuck. I'm going through a bulking process, bro. Leave me alone, okay? I'll see you. Bye.